From the summer of 2021 to 2022, I was a lifeguard at a small beach called Adams Point Beach, which is located in Quechee Lake, New York. I didn't really enjoy my job, to be honest, besides making friends with other lifeguards. I wasn't getting paid enough money, and my final paycheck of the summer of 2021 was like $350. To make matters even more difficult, I come from a family with no money. I live on a farm, and my parents fight with each other a lot. I never went to college because my family can't afford it, so I have to work 2 jobs every day. One from 9 to 5, and the other from 6 to 11, where I only get paid $15 an hour. In the summer of 2022, my boss, for whatever reason, had demoted me to a sub-lifeguard. This really pissed me off because I couldn't see my friends. One day in August 2022, I was called in to substitute for a lifeguard, as this lifeguard was busy that day and only one other lifeguard was available. Usually there are 3, but that day there was a shortage of staff. The start of that day was like how a day would usually start. Unfortunately, that changed in the afternoon. My 30-minute shift on the lifeguard chair was done, and the other lifeguard swapped with me. I walked back to the shed and went inside of it. About 10 minutes later, while I was on my phone, I heard a bunch of screaming and crying outside of the shed with the door closed. I didn't know what was going on, so I walked outside. What I saw next is an image that I will never unsee for the rest of my life. What I saw was a lifeguard, along with 4 other people, had a woman on a surf rescue board with both of her legs severed off. I felt petrified, but I had to help the other lifeguard as it was my job to save people. I helped carry the surfboard, but I looked behind me as it was so brutal to look at what was in front of me. I helped everyone place the board on a table with the woman lying on it right next to the shed. Thankfully, the police and medics were already called. I asked what happened. One guy said, "Guy by himself in a speedboat wasn't looking where he was driving his boat, and people told him to stop and slow down, but he was in his own world." He then ran over the woman, then would come to a stop like 3 seconds later. Then he apparently took off like a coward. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I then told the man to describe what the speedboat looked like. I asked him this because this was a very small lake, and I pretty much know everyone who comes to this lake and lives right next to it. He said it was a blue jet boat. When the man told me this, I felt as if my whole world was coming to an end. That was my dad's boat. He is the only one who owns a jet boat on this lake. I then saw everything turn blurry, and then it all went to black. I then woke up to 2 EMTs side by side next to me. They asked if I was alright. I told them I was fine, and then I went to go grab my water bottle, and then drank the water as if I had never drank water before in my life. I then exited the beach area as my boss told everyone to go home because of what happened today. I got in my car and I drove home, which was about 3 or 4 minutes away. When I got home, I turned off my car, stepped out to see my dad pacing back and forth nervously through the kitchen window. I rushed inside of the house and I went on a full rampage to my father. I confronted him and then called him a pussy for leaving the scene of the accident. He was breathing so hard. I had never seen him breathing like that ever before. As I was still yelling at him and my adrenaline was kicking in more than ever, I shoved him and started hitting him. He then told me to calm the fuck down. After about 10 hits, I finally pushed him to his full limits and he punched me so hard that I fell to the ground and my ears were ringing. He then yelled at me to stay down, before running out of the house and speeding off somewhere. I continued to bawl my eyes out. I was never close with my dad. I never came to him for help when needed, but never in a million years would I thought he would end up doing something so horrific. About an hour and a half later, my mother finally came home after going to the hospital to check on the woman who my father had injured. As my mother walked through the door, she hugged me for which felt like an eternity, and we cried together. We sat down together at the dinner table and she told me some good news and bad news. The good news is that the woman is alive and okay. The bad news is that she had to get both of her legs amputated off of her and have it be replaced with bionic legs. I felt so relieved that she survived, but I was still so devastated that my father took off. Never even apologized and never came to see the woman in the hospital. My mother asked, "Where did my husband go?" I told my mom that he took off. We tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. The police were called again, and we filed a missing persons report for my dad. The next few weeks, the police tried searching everywhere for him, and came up empty-handed. It was the worst 3 weeks of my life. I quit my job straight after due to the traumatic sight I've seen on that very day. I've been seeing a psychologist 3 times a week now. Every day, I was very slowly starting to get better and better, but I still have a long way to go. I also only work one job now and have been promoted at my job, which now I get paid $25 an hour. This makes me happier as I still have some luck in this world. I still haven't seen my father since. I don't really miss him that much after he attacked me and called me a bitch. I wish I could say that the story ends here, but sadly it doesn't, and the next part gets even worse. Fast forward to sometime in mid-July, during this past summer of 2024, I decided to go kayaking at 7 o'clock at night. I wanted to exercise my brain, and I needed some free time for myself. I took off in my kayak. I kayaked in the area of around 30 feet deep, then kayaking to the shallower area. My destination to stop was at a land area to walk on it and to take a break from kayaking as my arms were getting sore. During this whole time kayaking, I looked at the water beneath me. As I got to around 15 feet deep, what I saw on the bottom on the ground underneath the water was textbook horror. I saw a dead body of an old woman. I paddled out of there so fast, and then reaching to my destination that I originally planned to go. After pulling my kayak to shore, I ran into the grass area and threw up around 5 times. Luckily, I had my phone on me, so I called 911. The police came 10 minutes later. About 7 cop cars showed up along with a SWAT team. I gave them my story, and they told me to evacuate the area as it will be going under investigation. About 2 weeks later, we got some of the worst news ever. More worse news than anyone who lived in my town had ever gotten before. The detective told us that this person was murdered. They also traced DNA fingerprints to find out who the perpetrator is, and it worked. When they revealed who the killer was, I was nowhere near prepared to find out who it would be. It was my estranged father. Why the hell would he come back to this town if his main goal was to try to escape this town? I couldn't think of any motive of why he would kill this person. This was so devastating that the next day, I packed most of my clothes and drove all the way downstate to New York City. I needed a break from this so-called curse that is going on upstate in my hometown. I stayed in New York City for about 3 weeks in a cheap hotel, then came back. The police, this time along with the FBI, searched again for my father, and yet again, nothing. I quit my job after this again, and now I'm unemployed. Luckily, I have my little sister who had just graduated high school take over for me. As you're hearing this story as of now, there are still no updates on where my father could possibly be. He could be living in another state far away, or he maybe could have fled the country. I never went to see my father ever again after hearing that he murdered another human being. If there is more news revolving around this case, I'll keep you posted. I emigrated to New York from Bangladesh in 1968. I emigrated along with my wife, my 2 sons, and me and my wife's brothers and sisters along with their kids. I started learning English when I was 3, and I am now completely fluent in it. I completed my studies at University of Dhaka, and I am now retired from working. When I first came to New York, I moved to a poor part in the Bronx since we had no money. The streets were dirty, and there was a lot of gang violence in the area. Rats were everywhere, and so we had to survive with no air conditioning. Me and my family would experience xenophobia daily, but we didn't let it get to us. What we were focused on was surviving and to make enough money to pay the bills for our house. I ended up working 2 jobs every day. One as a taxi driver, and the other one of me being a cashier at a candy shop. My wife would work as a sewer, and my kids would go on to learn in school. As the years went by, it would mostly work out for us. We weren't getting paid a lot, but it was enough to pay the bills, child support, education, and groceries. As we saved all of our money, we were able to move to a more peaceful environment and a nicer and more stable house in Queens. Me and my wife still worked our jobs, and my kids were doing good in school. Every day was upbeat for us, except this one day in 1980. It was around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. At that time, I was working at the candy shop. Customers throughout the day would just buy candy and leave, but this one person had other plans. I was standing waiting for the next customer to arrive, and when that happened, I didn't expect it to take a harrowing turn for the worst. When this next person walked in, this guy was wearing all black, a face mask, sunglasses, and a beanie. I immediately knew he was going to rob the store. I pulled out a gun and he shouted, "Open the till now." I was scared shitless that I couldn't move my body as I held my hands up as a way of saying don't shoot me. I was trying to open the till, but for some odd reason, I couldn't open it. The next thing that the robber said would stay with me until I die. He called me a racial slur and then shot me. I fell down to the ground. Thank God I ducked and moved to the side a little as the bullet hit my side cheek as he was aiming for my brain. I was down on the ground and the robber took the till, threw it on the ground, which then caused the till to break and the money to fall out. He then placed all of the money in his black bag, then sped away in his car. After he was gone, a lot of people came rushing into the store because the gunshots were loud. They probably wanted to make sure no one would die. About 6 people came running into the store and rushed to make sure I was okay. I said I was fine, as I couldn't speak properly due to the bullet still on my cheek. And I was still bleeding. One woman told me that 911 was already called and that an ambulance would be there very shortly. Then the ambulance arrived and I was taken to the hospital. The bullet from my cheek was not removed until I was lying down on a hospital bed. My whole family was called and they came to the hospital in no time. They were all crying hysterically for me because they were glad that I was still alive and that I would be okay moving on. Police came a little later and they were just asking me questions that they would usually ask while solving a case. I told them that I didn't know what the thief had looked like as he was all covered up to protect his identity. They thanked me for my time and cooperation and told me they would let me know if they would ever catch the guy. I was able to go home 2 days later and continue what I would do every day, which was to work. The owner and the other employees of the candy shop were nice enough to pay for my medical bill. Sadly, the identity of the robber was never found and he was never arrested. This was really upsetting to me because I could have died that day, but I am just thankful that I survived, or else I wouldn't be telling you this story. Today my family and I are doing much better in wealth and living. I am retired, along with my wife, but she is still a landlord of our house. My oldest son is a doctor, my younger son is a lawyer, and my daughter, who was born later in the United States, became a writer. If you work or ever plan on working as a cashier, I just want to tell you this. Pay attention to your surroundings. If a thief ever comes and points a gun at you and demands they want money, just give it to them. Don't hesitate to do it, or you'll be unlucky and get shot and possibly die, depending on where the bullet hits you. I was a freshman at a small college called Five Towns College in Long Island, New York, in 2020, when the coronavirus pandemic was still going on. It is a performing arts college. I majored in music performance with a minor in audio production. Not that many people know about this college. This has to be the worst college in New York. They overpay a lot of people who can't afford college. They will accept anybody in. The professors and advisors don't care about their jobs. They pass anyone and let them all graduate, and the people who actually study hard and graduate don't ever get jobs from the majors they studied in. And worst of all, this campus used to be a middle school. I had graduated this past May, and I am happy as hell to finally get out of that dumpy school. Backtracking to 2020, I started taking classes there in August of 2020. I trusted this college to be a good experience at first, and I have since regretted doing that. There were a lot of weird other students there who had horrible social skills. There was a lot of other people smoking weed all day. I didn't really like anybody there and their antics, but there was one person that I disliked more than anyone else. There was this 23-year-old freshman guy named Jeremy. He was a theater kid. People say he was a creepy man that you should avoid at all times. A lot of other people told me that he stalks a lot of girls. I hoped that he would never stalk me, but sadly, this was so untrue. The first time I ever met him was in the school's cafeteria. He walked up to me as if we were best friends. He started off a conversation by saying, "Hello, my name is Jeremy. What about you?" I was being cautious of myself already because of what other people told me about his behavior. I just remained calm and told him my name back. The conversation then went on a little bit longer. We just told each other what our majors were and what we plan on doing after graduating college. Then my food came and I placed my food in a bag. He then waved and said, "Bye." I said bye back in a soft voice, with a neutral expression on my face. I was really scared at that moment. I turned back one last time to just see him staring at me, and then I walked outside. I already got bad vibes from this dude. I want to make it clear that the next time we see each other that I have no interest in talking to him. But about a few days later, I saw him again in the cafeteria. This time a bunch of people were there. He said hi again. I just said hi back and was ready to order my food and not waste time talking to this weirdo. He then started asking questions about how my day was and how my classes were going. I just gave him simple one-word answers like yeah, no, or good. I really did not want to talk to him. Then he asked a bit more creepy and personal question. He asked if I was single. Now this question I did not answer. Thank God that a cook who works there asked what I wanted to order, and I told him what I wanted. I then walked out from the kitchen area, then into the dining hall. I then heard Jeremy order, then him walking out of the kitchen right behind me. He asked the same uncomfortable question again, but I ignored him once again. It took him about 15 seconds for him to ask, "Why are you ignoring me?" Then another guy who was also waiting for his food jumped into the conversation and straight up told Jeremy to back off, that she has no interest in talking to you. Beat it. Then things had escalated quickly. Jeremy asked the other guy, "Do you want to fight me?" He replied back with a disgusted expression, "No, I am just telling you to back off." After this, me and the other guy got our food at the same time, and we walked out together. As we did this, we heard Jeremy make a loud grunt and stomp his feet really loudly, as he just stood there, still waiting for his food. I then thanked this guy for having my back when things could have gotten a lot worse. He introduced himself as Connor. We had a nice small talk, and then walked back to our dorms. On an unrelated note, Connor turned out to be my boyfriend, and we are still a couple to this day. About 2 weeks have gone by, and I haven't seen Jeremy since. I was very surprised to not see him, considering that this whole college has like 400 students. Probably even less. I made a small friend group with the kids in my major, and we talked about our major. I felt more happy and safe at that moment, but I damn sure celebrated way too early. There was this one night when I was coming back from a party at a bar. I drove back to campus, and I arrived back at around 11 o'clock. And as I walked back to my dorm, I saw Jeremy just standing outside of the college entrance, doing nothing. He turned his head to me. He was staring at me. I felt more like he was staring into my soul. I then walked away quickly because I was so freaked out. I got back to my dorm safely. A few nights later, things were getting a lot worse. One night I heard a knock at my window. I had a feeling that it was this Jeremy guy, but I wasn't 100% sure. Could be anyone. It is very uncommon to knock on someone's window this late at night. Maybe it could be a friend. My curiosity got the best of me. I took a deep breath and, in one swift motion, pulled the shade back only to see, you know who, Jeremy. I threw the shade and fell back. How did he know where my dorm room was? I was so terrified that I locked myself in the bathroom. I was even more scared because I was living in a single. Luckily, Jeremy didn't live on campus, as he lived nearby because he told me this. I then came out of the bathroom about 15 minutes later. I braced myself to open the shade again. So I did, and this time I felt relieved that he wasn't there anymore. It only got worse 2 nights later. After coming back from a late night choir rehearsal, I of course saw Jeremy standing right outside the dorm area. This time, as I unlocked the gate, I ran for it, and he was chasing me. Sadly, the gate didn't close in time, and he managed to get through it. I ran all the way to my dorm hall. I was hoping an RA would be present there sitting in the booth. Sadly, the RA was not there, but there was a sign that said, "I will be back in 10 to 15 minutes. I had to take a phone call." Of course they left, I said to myself. I found a perfect hiding spot. There was a lounge, and it had a bathroom there. The bathroom was open, and it had a door stopper keeping it open. So I hid behind that bathroom door. Yet again, the door to my dorm hall didn't close in time, and Jeremy had entered the building. He looked all over for me. He must have saw the bathroom, but he never walked in or saw my eyes through the side. He then yelled, "Fuck," out loud, and then left the building. I waited another minute to see if he was really gone, and he was. I entered my dorm room, and the shades to the window were open, and I was happy to see that he wasn't there. The next day, I told my friends about what Jeremy had been doing to me, telling them he knocked on my dorm room window and chased me to my dorm room. They were all appalled and all agreed with each other that they will walk with me wherever I go. I felt so pleased with them, as they were my real friends. Nothing happened for the next few days, but a few nights later, I was chilling with my friends in my dorm room as they were protecting me. We were eating food, listening to music, talking and playing video games. This was interrupted with a couple of bangs at the window. I whispered to my friends to turn off the music. I heard from outside the window, "Open up, I need to talk to you." It was Jeremy's voice. We all stayed silent. He then spoke again, saying, "Open the window right now, or else you have to face consequences." Thankfully, the window was locked. Me and my friends all then went to the bathroom and hid and silently called the campus police, which I should have done days before, when the first time he knocked at my window. As we were all in the bathroom, we heard Jeremy trying to open the window and break it down. Luckily, the police arrived in just 5 minutes, not even. We heard a knock at the door and the person yelling out, "Resident Life, it's all good now. You can open the door." This was not Jeremy's voice, and we all sighed out of relief. I opened the door and I told the head of Resident Life all of what had happened. They said they will contact the school administration and try to have him dismissed from the college campus. He also told me that they told him to leave or they will call the real cops. I thanked him because he was really nice. I then told my friends that it was okay now and you guys can leave. The next day I got some very exciting news. Jeremy had been removed from the college campus and totally dismissed from the school. I jumped out of my bed and screamed happily while I punched my fist in the air. I was able to complete my college life without any more unsafe moments that could have me in danger. I still hated the college because it was just a bad school besides my creepy stalker encounters. I have not seen or heard of Jeremy since, and I want to keep it that way for the rest of my life. This happened when I was 13. I was just starting out in high school, and I'm not going to lie, it was rough. My parents had split up that year, which was really hard. I was also a really awkward teen and very sensitive, and my social skills were very slow to come. Overall, I was extremely self-conscious. With my parents' breakup came money issues, as it often does with families. And because of this, there was just really no money for back-to-school clothes, etc. My parents were doing the best they could, but it was a time that I really needed stability and it just wasn't there. I did have a few friends looking back. They were not the greatest influences though. But who am I to judge? To be honest, I was all over the map as a teen and would just go along with some of the questionable activities my friends were into. Hey, it was the 80s and I was 13. One of the favorite pastimes with the girls I hung out with just happened to be skipping school. I wasn't really into skipping classes yet, still really worried about getting into trouble. Don't get me wrong, I pulled enough sick days as a kid just to stay home from school, but skipping out from classes with friends seemed like a whole different game. The thing is though, I really wanted to be included. Through the year, I participated in hanging out more with this group of about 4 other girls, so there was usually 5 of us. We did sleepovers, mall visits, you know, the usual teen stuff. I still hadn't skipped out of school with anyone yet, but then I heard about a really cool afternoon I would have loved to have been a part of. At lunch, a few of our friends were talking about how they had skipped out from afternoon classes the other day. I don't really remember them being missing, but maybe I just thought they were sick or something. As my naive self deep down, I probably knew they were skipping out. Anyways, apparently they had discovered a really cool cave down by this beach we all knew. I had been to this beach with my family before, but never heard of any cave. This beach was off one of the main roads, and the bus stop was really close to the pathway, which led down to the water. It was not the easiest pathway to navigate, and the stairs were also steep, which made this beach a little trickier for anyone with strollers or mobility issues to get to. This made it a quieter beach, and the ideal place for teens who didn't want to get caught smoking, drinking, or skipping school. I should mention that summer was approaching, and although some swimmers started to hit the ocean, this beach remained pretty quiet for the most part. We decided to make plans to spend the whole day at this beach with the cave. We would show up for attendance and then just take off. Who cared, right? I was starting to feel a little bolder as the year progressed. The day came and my friends and I attended the morning like we had planned, and then gathered our things and slid away to the bus stop. We felt like such rebels hiding behind the bushes as cars drove by, convinced it was one of our parents. Pretty soon though, we were on the safety of the bus. It wasn't the sunniest of days I seem to recall, but the water was beautiful. The 2 friends who had already been to the cave led the way, ambling up the rocky bluffs on the side of the beach. The climb took us just a few minutes. We rounded some huge boulders and there we were. It was just a little hidden alcove. To be honest, it wasn't as cave-like as I expected. I was a little disappointed, but what was cool, we were totally hidden. We hung out there, giggled, and some of the girls smoked cigarettes. Some of us read magazines, ate snacks, and gossiped, all of that stuff. Because we were off in our own little world, we hadn't been aware of the group of adults that had arrived at the other end of the beach. It was a group of around 5 or 6 adults, probably in their 30s or older. We noticed them a little later when we decided to come out for a little swim. The sun had finally come out a bit more, and we had previously toyed with the idea of swimming. One problem though, we realized we had forgotten our bathing suits. One of the girls, we'll call her Sarah, had a few extra swimming suits, but bottoms only. Well, that might be okay. Unaware of the group that arrived from the beach at the time, we decided to go swimming topless. After all, we had all gone skinny dipping in our friend's pool earlier on in the year. This might be fun. So us girls ventured into the water with only the bottom part of our bathing suits. I actually was surprised at how confident I felt, but that was not to last. I got used to the water quickly and swam out on my own. Not farther out, but more away from our group and swimming to the other side along the bay, forgetting any guilt about skipping school. All of a sudden, I heard someone whistling, as well as hoots and hollers, and I looked back to see this group of men gesturing out to me. It turned out that there was a little party happening with several women there as well, and it was clear the drinks were kicking in. I had been oblivious to them being there. They were hard to see as the way the beach curved, plus there was a section of trees and rocks. I remember seeing a bottle of something in one of the guys' hands. I guess some of my other friends noticed them and turned back to the far end of where we had situated ourselves. I, however, was focusing on the water and enjoying my swim and not paying much attention to what was happening on the beach. Now I realize I am out there topless and this drunken group decided to watch me as their new entertainment. Later on, one of my friends would reveal that she did notice this group watching us as we slid into the water, so it was no secret we were topless. After a few minutes, they got more distracted with each other, so I felt like maybe it'd be no big deal. I looked over cautiously to this group who seemed to be getting louder by the minute, and noticed one really creepy guy watching me swim. It seemed as though every time I looked to the shore he was staring at me. I felt a bit relieved to see some women there though. Surely this group of drunken adults were nothing to worry about. I swam around, getting ready to make my way back to where my friends were when I heard a voice. "Hey, didn't you hear me?" I asked how's the water. It was that creepy guy who was staring at me swimming. I looked back at the group, thinking that they would call this guy back to them and not be so pervy. Well, they didn't. All they did was laugh. I guess I was too nice or too easy of a target because before you know it, this other guy who seemed more like in his 40s walked out in the water towards me as well. I started to get a really bad vibe. The second dude got distracted and went back to his group. I looked at the first guy still approaching and all I could see was really bad intention. I looked over to see my friend's towel drying off, doing their own thing. Maybe they thought things were fine and I would just swim back any minute. But this guy was getting closer and closer to me. He had a comb in his hand and he was walking towards me, dipped the comb in the water, stopped and combed the 3 hairs on his balding head and said to me, "I hear the water's warmer over here." I looked back at the other adults on the beach with pleading eyes. No one seemed to care. They were just laughing. I get they were drunk-ass grown-ups and wanted some fun, but this was messed up. One woman even shouted out, "Go for it." I couldn't believe it. Full-on grown-ups allowing this drunk dude to creep on young teenage girls. Fear and serious regret was now washing all over me. What seemed like innocent fun skinny dipping was now having serious consequences. I was not the fastest swimmer and he was closing in on me quickly. He was way too close now. I realized I was the only one who could get me out of this. I don't know where it came from, but I firmly said fuck off. This made him mad, and he didn't stop approaching me, but flicked water at my face and looked so angry. He said, "Fuck you, you little bitch." He made his way back up the beach, cursing me out and saying, "Effing little tease." I can't remember what the others did, but I just made a beeline, back to my friends, swimming as fast as I could, not looking back and vowing never to let this happen again. I was upset but downplayed what just had happened when I got back to my friends. We got dressed and I just remember feeling like I wanted to stay quiet, to never ever draw attention to myself again. The rest of the day just seemed to coast along and I walked back to the bus stop a few hours later. I never did get in trouble for skipping, but I almost got in trouble with something entirely more dangerous. Over the years, I've gained a strong sense of self. I've had a career working with kids. I also now have a teenager myself, and I'm starting my own landscaping business. I give my son as much parental guidance and teen advice without being overbearing, of course. He recently confided in me that he and a group of friends had left school early to go swimming at a beach really close to where this story took place. And I remember the day I skipped school with my friends. I remembered how disappointed I felt with this group of adults who should have known better. I remembered how I needed to take responsibility and be aware of my behavior and surroundings. And even though I'm a grown-up myself now, I still want to say that creepy guy on the beach, let's not meet again. Today marks a day that I had a real school lockdown. I still remember it like it was yesterday. I am now 21 years old and I am still traumatized by it to this day. This all happened back when I was in 3rd grade. It was the second week of school on a Friday and I was already having a fun first 2 weeks. I got to see all my friends again and I had such excellent teachers that everyone told me that they were all the best teachers before I entered 3rd grade, and they were right. We didn't have any homework yet as we just started settling into the school year. On Fridays, I would usually be so happy because on Friday nights, me and my friends would always go to Dave & Buster's in town, and the weekend was approaching. Tragically, this was the worst day of my life and I didn't get to go to Dave & Buster's. It was 11 o'clock and lunch was 1 hour away. I was excited for lunch because Friday we would always have pizza. I was heading into my 3rd period. About 20 minutes into the class, I asked the teacher to go use the restroom. She said I could, and I took a hall pass with me. I walked into the bathroom and no one was there. I really had to go number 2, so I went into one of the bathroom stalls. I just finished up doing my duty and I went to the sink to wash my hands. After finishing washing my hands, I went to go get a paper towel. Suddenly, I was interrupted by the school lockdown alarm going off. It beeped exactly 4 times, which meant it was a real lockdown. If it beeped 3 times, that meant it was just a drill. I was really young at the time, but I knew how school lockdowns worked, so I turned off the bathroom lights, then went back into the bathroom stall I was just in. And I closed the toilet lid and squatted down on it. I was so scared at this moment. I couldn't just run back out of the bathroom and get back to my class because then I would be putting everyone's lives in danger. 10 minutes had just passed by and the lockdown was still going on. I was so scared and I started shaking and crying very softly. All of a sudden, I then heard footsteps approach the bathroom door. I went silent now and I regained composure. I then heard the bathroom door open and I saw the outside of the hallway glow into the bathroom. The footsteps then moved right in front of the bathroom stall that I was in, then stopped abruptly. At this moment, I saw a light flash before my eyes. I started breathing, but then quickly covered my mouth with my hands, so my breathing couldn't be heard. Then about 20 seconds later, the person walked away from the bathroom stall and out of the bathroom door. I felt better now because I thought I would die at that very moment. The lockdown still went on for another 15 minutes, and I still remained in the position that I was in. Then I heard a very loud scream. It sounded like a scream in pain and a scream of an adult male. The screams then faded away quickly and I could no longer hear it anymore. About a minute later, the principal came on the loudspeakers and said, "Elvis has left the building," which meant the lockdown was over and we were all safe now. The school closed straight after the lockdown for the day for obvious reasons. My mother picked me up like 15 minutes later and I went home. The next day, my mother told me why we had a lockdown, and what she said sent chills down my spine. Apparently one of the people working in the administration got a phone call, and this person told her that a pizza pie that was ordered from someone in your school is on the way. She then sent everyone a message in the faculty's email chat and asked if everyone had ordered pizza. Everyone replied with no. And then she messaged the principal that we should go on a lockdown, and we did. Then later, the intruder walked through the school's front entrance. At that time, we were in full lockdown. Then he tried every class door, but they were all locked except for the bathroom door that I was in, which he had walked through, and another class where the teacher had to barricade it with a desk drawer. Sadly, it wasn't strong enough, and the intruder was able to walk into the classroom, armed with a knife in his hand. As the teacher saw the knife, she grabbed a pair of scissors, which was right next to her, and threw it like a dart, and it landed on the intruder's shoulder. Then the intruder screamed, which is what I heard, and ran out of the school's front door and drove off. The reason why this man intruded the school is so haunting that it made me want to leave the Earth and live on Venus. Apparently the intruder was dating one of the boys' mom at the school, and she had apparently cheated on him with his best friend. This angered him so much that he wanted to get revenge on them both by killing her son with a knife. I don't know what kind of sick, demented person would ever do this, and this man is just pure evil. I didn't know this kid, and we never had any classes together. It was also announced that the school would be closed for the whole next week. The boy left the school and moved out of town with his mom, and was never seen or heard from again. I still think about this every day. I just hope this kid and his mother are doing much better today. I'm still single, but I have advice for people who are in a relationship with each other. Don't cheat on one another, or you could end up in a situation like this.